or it's the goal to reach that, for example, knowledge is inside these three areas.
Yes.
And understanding also.
Yes.
I mean,
all of these things are inside those three areas. But actually, to go back to what Christine was saying, if you write your instructional objectives because you say, I teach dance, and you write them very, very specifically only from the psychomotor domain, I'm saying you're not quite encompassing all of what dance, which is what Christine was saying before.
I have a question about the domains. Spending some time in public schools in Washington, but not in dance. I was not a teacher, so I wasn't actually writing the objectives, but nobody seemed to care about anything except cognitive. And so my question is this national, or is it mostly in New York where you feel like people are recognizing other domains?
Well, I think everywhere people are recognizing mostly the cognitive domain. What do you think the testing movement is about? Okay? I think as dance educators, what we can promote is that we have more integrated, holistic people. And what we also promote is through the movement experience and the whole content of a dance experience, we're dealing with the whole person. We're actually elevating everything together. Yes.
Well, we teach from a standpoint where the social emotional component actually gets priority in some ways, or it's given equal footing as the academic pieces. And actually, if the social emotional pieces are all in check, then the cognitive learning can go even further, because you don't have this child's, sitting there thinking that someone's looking at her funny. And if she does think that someone's looking at her funny, you can say, I think you're looking at me a little funny. Is something wrong? Because you have those tools.
So this is going to exist. Every assignment you have to do in the dance education program is not going to specifically ask you for this, but trust me, regardless of where you are, regardless of what kind of setting, and especially if you're in a setting that doesn't demand this will actually assist you. And I'm thinking more of the private studios, the open classes. You can have really broad objectives, and some of them can just be for that day. But if you have that, then you have a reason for being for your whole class, and it's not just a bunch of stuff thrown together for no connection. Having outcomes in mind means everything works towards that. And even more importantly, it gives you something to assess. So you can talk about whether or not students are successful on the basis of whether or not they've achieved these. And that's really critical. Because there's nothing worse than meeting a parent and they say, why isn't my child moving ahead of ballet? And you just say she's just not good enough. Well, that's not good enough, It's like, can you give me something a little more specific? Especially if parents are paying for after-school programs and stuff like that.
I know that, this is the K-12 system again, but I know that each of our students has to pass their goals.
Right.
And if they don't pass their goals, those goals are passed over the next year.
Yes.
And they're expected to pass them the next year, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And there's different goals on top of that each year.
Right.
And then there's monthly goals on top of the yearly goals.
Right.
So it's really watched very carefully on who's progressing.
And there are systems in which that structure is really formal, and then there are systems like Betty's talking about the open studio schedule, or I keep looking at this ABT table over here, private, studios. It doesn't mean that you're all, it doesn't mean that you're, but these things happen. In fact, I worked in this program for a while, and every summer, they got a grant to do this, but every summer I was brought in as an evaluator. We developed a rubric, which meant things that we were looking for in the students. I would observe a bunch of classes. We had it down to literally a check off the box system. And then from that I would write a narrative on each child, and every single parent would come in and we would talk. This is how your child did this summer. These are things she can work on. These are things she excels at, There was no grade. It didn't compute to an A or an 85 or a 96 or anything like that. But it was just about, then you know where you are. It's not just she doesn't like me because I don't have the right color hair kind of thing, Those days of being in a dance class and somebody doesn't like me because they don't like the way I look should be done, okay? But trust me, and you all know it too, there are plenty of teachers out there who are still teaching like that. True? Okay, so we, in order to like move beyond that, and in a sense it sort of ties into what we were talking about before. Instead of looking at somebody and seeing the color of their skin or their gender or anything like that, we're seeing them on really specific things, like how are they adapting to applying this to that, rather than the color of the skin, the color of the hair, the color of their eyes, their height, their body build. It's really, can this person take this information here, apply it to this, and have this outcome? And that becomes a much different way of looking at students in our class.
Yes, and
Yes.
all that said, like once I found that it's helpful to know about the taxonomy even when going to an open class.
Yeah.
Because then you can actually, even if the teacher doesn't know what they're doing, often a good
Yes.
good engaging teacher in an open studio will be going all through that stuff. But only some of the people in this room were in class with Deb yesterday, but Benny, what he led us through actually went to higher knowledge, because he was showing us a combo, but then we were doing it in different directions, and like all of that stuff was ways that we were applying it, and not just repeating you the entire time. And all the rationale he gave us to put it in
You've been
context.
doing this without even knowing it. Never knew it
It's
to.
cool that it does, like,
Yeah.
it takes that stuff.
Yeah.
into
Okay.
Consideration.
It'll make your teaching, regardless of where you're teaching, so much more clear. And the other thing that helps it be very clear is because if you have some outcomes planned, and you get into class and something doesn't go, some specific thing doesn't go the way you planned, you've got a bigger picture. It's not like, darn it, I'm going to work here till I make this work. It's like, okay, what I'm trying to help the students achieve is that, so I'll try a different way. That's all. It makes your teaching much easier. Because a different way doesn't mean you're throwing out your whole plan. A different way means that there's more than one way to get there. And if this particular thing isn't working with this particular group of people on this day, that's all right. Plans matter. The little details can work themselves out. Yes.
I know the big hot button for education today is individualized education.
Yes.
And we have to do this in our classroom, regardless of dance, any subject. We have to make it tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, or group 1, group 2, group 3. And then our lessons are actually structured to tailor each group's needs. So our group 3 would be, I don't want to say lower functioning, but do not grasp concepts as fully. And then group 1 would be almost general education. These children with extra help could succeed in a general school. And then group 2 would be, somewhere in between 3 and 1, which is funny because yesterday, Benny's combination, I'm sure you could have put everyone in the class tier 1, 2, 3. I'm sure I would have been a 3. But he started off with a combination, and then he took the same combination, but then he reversed it or reversed half of us so that it was going back and forth. So your higher level students will be able to take the combination and reverse it, while maybe your level 3, level 2s are still having trouble trying to get the original combination.
That. It's just you asked us to select ourselves. You said who feels comfortable with this now versus.
Okay.
So
that's
yeah.
good too.
So that's what I know.
That's a different way of doing it. And you can write these outcomes in a way that you can create variations for people. In fact, I'll tell you one anecdote, and then we have to go on to Austin. This is the problem with everything changing all the time. We have, and they're going to sit on a shelf forever, and they will never be implemented, but we have 9th grade performance exams for high school students in dance for New York State. They will never be used. That's a political discussion that would take me to the rest of my life to explain to you. But anyway, I was the director of the dance one. There's dance, art, music, and theater. And we wrote them in such a way, and they got as far as being piloted. So by pilot, we actually used them 1 year for a 9th grade class all over the state. We had things. And we sat down in big powwows and assessed these. We were actually piloting the test, not the students, but the test. But we were really proud of ourselves because we wrote them in such a way that it didn't matter what level the dancers were as far as Were they in a performing arts high school and had 5 or 10 years of dance before? Or was 9th grade really their very first dance class? Because we had some of our most successful students were the people who didn't have 10 years of dance, because instead of sort of turning on automatic pilot and saying, oh, I know how to do this, they were really thoughtful about doing the compositions and everything, and they actually scored much higher because of the way we wrote these. So we were looking for things like the thoughtful putting together of different elements. So it wasn't how high did the leg go, but it was more like, were these put together with all these components considered so that this kind of synthesis would happen. And it's so you can, when you sit down and really think about how you write these, you can make it possible for multiple levels of people within the same class to be successful. So it's not just whose leg was higher or who had more turns or who had better line or who had more turnout or some of those really abstract things that are not necessarily the judgment of the best student in the class. But they have been used in the past as like who's best in the class. And instead you can really sort of turn it inside out and get to really who's connecting it all and synthesizing it and making the full complement of a real full dance being. And it's all in how you write this. Okay, so I'll just leave you with that thought because we'll not stop using them. And let's move on right now to Mostyn. We have to move on to Mostyn because at this point, by looking at Mostyn, so has everybody set up your class to observe or maybe even observed it? Okay, so at this point, what you're going to do is you're going to go back, and so your written assignment should be what you observed, not evaluative. It's just what the teacher did. The teacher set them up at the bar, or the teacher set them up in rows, or blah, 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 and taught this kind of warm-up, et cetera, not like the students were good, or there was a crybaby in the corner. That's not so much what the discussion should be about. And then go back and write the teacher was setting it up with this type of Mostyn technique, okay? The teacher was using blank, command, and this is why I know the teacher was using command. So in order to really figure out what those are, let me 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to do this faster than I planned, so we're going to do by tables. Okay, so the two of you in this table are one, okay? These two tables. Pull up a chair and face each other. I'll give you your assignment. Let's separate. No, that's too many people. Wait. Sorry, I take that back. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, stay here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Go with Danielle. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Excellent. Okay. You're a 6. You're a 7. Okay.
Should we record the discussion?
Okay, I'm going to come over to each table. I'm going to give you your assignment. You have about 5 or 10 minutes to talk about it quickly, and then we'll do a little.
Hi, Alicia, you're in our group.
Okay.
Wait, are we? You jumped ship and ballerinas too?
She said.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Who are we?
Are you filming right now?
Yeah.
Oh, you can.
Alicia's in. Say hi to Alicia.
Hi, Alicia.
She'll see this. I'll email it to her.
It's really funny.
So she's part of us.
Oh, 2012.
Yeah, I know. I was like, what is that?
I think the academic experience has certainly changed.
It definitely has.